use the wrong title. I did consider it, calling it how to make the computer do the boring stuff, but kind of sounded too funny. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm Milos. I'm a founder and designer of a studio called Citrus Mist. At Citrus Mist on Twitter, citrus-mist.com. Based down in Shoreditch, small outfit, lots of WordPress sites and identity work. But this is a DevOps talk, and you're all probably now thinking, well, this guy said he's a designer, and now he's talking DevOps. What's going on? Well, why should you trust me? You know, like I said, it's a small outfit. Do lots of stuff, especially on smaller sites. I tend to a lot of the time do the build, and the design. So just kind of full stack plugins and themes. Last year, I worked on 12 WP installs in total. 8 of them were new, I had to set up myself. 6 on shared hosting. So yeah, I think last year I really had to kind of get my head around having my front-end code, especially having a nice workflow for front-end on shared hosting. You know, when you're on a bigger host, you've got lots of options for deployment and stuff, but with shared hosting, you're limited. You have to keep it lo-fi. You can't use Capistranos. You kind of anyway. Also, that wasn't, you know, the experience from last year is not enough to persuade you. I have a computer science degree, so I do know one thing or two about code. So the WordPress projects we take on, or generally tend to be smaller prototype sites. And they're really interesting projects for us. As a designer, I really like working on those because you get your clients who are really passionate about design. They know what their brand is, they're in tune with it, they're in tune with their competition. You can have very intense conversations about it, but you know, you talk to them about code quality or best practices or anything like that, they're just lost. They don't really appreciate the effort that goes into it. And also, you know, you mention concatenation, unification, any of that, they just think you're using Java to extract more money out of them. So, you know, I want to use these best practices, but they are, you know, I don't want to think about them too much. My time is better spent solving the real brief for them and, you know, making it look good and, you know, focusing on the business logic, essentially. So my workflow used to be, I'd do some work, I'll optimize images, JS, CSS, upload via FTP, export the database, upload the database, search and replace. I used 4 different interfaces to achieve this. So CodeKit on Apple, Transmit, PHPMyAdmin, then search and replace script. And that's without even, you know, touching the text editor, the browser, or the graphics software. Like, you know, ask me, it's a failure, like facepalm. It's cognitively expensive, it's prone to human error, it's ultimately boring and cumbersome. I don't want to worry if I've minified my CSS, my JS in the right order, and things, yeah, it's just, you know, this is formulaic stuff. So after doing about 2 of these smaller sites, I started kind of thinking, well, you know, there must be another way. And just, if you haven't, if I haven't mentioned, the process that I'm going to talk about here is kind of focused, it's quite a lo-fi one. It's focused on getting stuff out there, on the shared hosting. Like, I don't ever take resell the hosting. If a client wants shared hosting, I point them to the right direction, they buy it, they're in charge of it. In 2 years, I don't want them chasing me down because they're £6.99 a month, didn't get charged for my card, because I lost my card and it's a different number now. So, you know, it's up. That's their responsibility. So I wrote down a list of requirements that I want to have a good front-end workflow, and I would like to, you know, automatically scaffold the new WP install without having to download files, unpack them, any of that. I want a live reload, edit my CSS, I want my browser to refresh, I want SAS, I want my code editor to warn me, or the terminal to warn me when I've made JavaScript errors. I want theme asset optimizing, so putting it all together in a nice minified file. I want plugin scaffolding. I want to make a plugin called events. I just want to press a button and get my file structure in place. I don't really want to worry about creating it. So, yeah, I thought it is a bit ambitious, but other frameworks are doing this. You know, the Rails is very, well, it's very tool heavy. On the front end, you've Angular, you've got all kinds of generators, backbone, and WordPress has been around longer for most of these things. And, the tools are kind of limited that let you do this. It's a bit, it's a shame, and considering the amount of sites that run on WordPress, yeah, I was surprised. Well, initially, I kind of started looking at the traditional front-end, well, the newish kind of front-end tools that do this stuff for front-end development. Yeoman, Grunt, Bauer, and WP-CLI. How many people here are familiar with Yeoman? Grunt, guess a bit more. Bauer, and what about WP-CLI? Actually expected more for WP-CLI. So the tools that I mentioned before, they solve most of my problems actually. The ones in blue, you can kind of do with the tools that are available out there. I'll get to the point why it says WOP in a second on the black. Before I continued, you could argue that I'm swapping one toolbox for another. Yeah, it's true, but I choose much more, and it gives you one unified interface. It's a lo-fi one, it's a command line, but it's a singular interface to achieve lots of things. So, cognitively you reduce the load by miles. Even though it's not shiny, it's got big blue, red buttons. I'm a designer, and I'm still advocating a unified interface. I think, well, it's an advantage. So, just for those not unfamiliar, Yeoman is a generator. It's essentially a really powerful templating engine. You can template things with various logic depending on your input. Grunt automates tasks. It just runs in sequence depending on one of your actions. And then you've got Bauer, which is a front-end package manager. So if you want a library like images loaded, you'd say, Bauer, give me this, and it will look for any dependencies that package does have, downloaded dependencies as well, nicely in your JS folder, so you don't really have to worry about trawling the internet and GitHub to see what needs what. And WP-CLI lets you control your WordPress install from the terminal. You can install a bunch of plugins, post. If you're looking to test your pagination, you can just dump a bunch of posts in it. It's quite a neat tool actually. I've started to use it a lot in my workflow. So I was initially going to do a live demo, but it started to clock in a bit long, so I'm just going to quickly run you through the steps how you can achieve. I'll put the slides up, so afterwards, if there's any code that you might have not been able to write down or want further explanation about. Anyway, so step one, I'll show you how to achieve install your WordPress, get a library load, enable you to use a pre-processing, linear code, scaffold the theme, so basically just get a template of the theme, dump it in your folder when you're installing WordPress, and optimize your assets, so your images, your JavaScript and the CSS for use on a live server. So, I mean, considering you wouldn't need to have Node installed with Node Package Manager, but in case you do, open up your terminal, install the WordPress generator, go to the empty folder and just your WordPress, and you'll get a bunch of prompts, and 2 minutes later you've downloaded WordPress, created WP config with nice defaults, started a Git repo, downloaded the starter theme, and you've made the first commit. All you need, you go to your URL, your dev URL, and you just continue with the 5-minute install. It's as easy as that. Now, this tool, it's called WordPress, it does a lot more. You can set up custom directories, install WP as a submodule, Vagrant with Puppet. I don't really use Vagrant, but it's there. I know some people get quite keen on it. So, yeah. Now, I did say that you'll get your SAS and your library load. Well, in the step, well, that's a bit of a cheat because there's a theme preset that's downloaded from a Git repo that's configured to run SAS library load. So in the step, you just say where to find the theme, and once the WordPress installed, the theme will be there bundled with you. And you go to your theme, grunt. It will start watching the folder for any changes. You make a change, some errors in JavaScript, it will complain. If not, it'll automatically refresh your browser, and that's it. Step 1's done. When you're ready, you can run grunt build, compile SAS, amplify your JS, minify images, and SVG. Now, step 2. Now, this is something that I actually spent a while thinking about. WordPress traditionally, well, if you use loads of plugins, you'll end up kind of using each plugin will register a JS file, and you publish your site, and then you look at the dev tools, and there's like 12 JavaScript files, and none of them are minified, and it's all a bit of a mess. So I really wanted to be able to conditionally load assets. So if I'm developing locally on my local machine, I want to see all the JavaScript unminified so I can debug it. If I'm running it on a production server, on a live server, I want it all to be minified. Just one request, download everything for my theme. And it's actually quite, well, not hard to achieve, but for something as simple as that, it took me quite a few steps. I had to edit WP config, and kind of move a bunch of settings into a file that only sits on a local machine, only on a production machine, only a staging machine. Then set up the relevant username and password, and then in functions PHP, I'd just conditionally load the minified asset if the environment is set up as staging or production. And I've had to structure the folder in a certain, the theme folder in a certain way. So in the vendor folder, you get all your Bower packages, anything from that folder, the bespoke folder, and your main bootstrap file will just automatically get minified as you edit it into a main minified JS. Don't have to do much. Just upload your theme to the server, and yeah, automatically everything's fine. Yeah, don't forget to exclude the from version control. You don't want your passwords in the GitHub repo, essentially. Now, my favorite, and this is, I was so happy when I found this out because I used Capistrano. I was really in love with Capistrano, and I found out that on shared hosting you can't really use it because, well, essentially you can't. It requires you to have WordPress. Your site root has to be in a subfolder, which very often is not possible on shared hosting. So a note about server setup. I use Git flows, so 3 sets of branches: master, dev, feature. The staging or the test server tracks develop, production server tracks master. That's about it. In the terminal, I found this tool that sits on top of WP CLI. It's called WP CLI deploy. It's really simple. It's really basic. It just rsyncs your folders. Yeah, really simple to set up. It does require a lot of information about your server. And finally, the payoff. You've got a bunch of commands. You can sync your files with the server. It's amazingly easy and amazingly fast. You can, any plugins that you sit in your server, on your local machine, you can upload with the what plugins flag, any change to the theme. You can also download My favorite now is the database deployment. Now, when I saw this, I was immediately in love. You just run this command, and it will export your local DB, it will search and replace, it will upload the server, it will substitute the remote DB's hostname. It works every time. Same if your client's made some changes or somebody you're working with has made some changes. On site, you want to pull them down to your install, just pull staging, and it will pull from the staging state. It's amazing. Also, responsive design. I don't know, maybe somebody else can solve this problem for me, but I tend to run into trouble when I'm working on my machine. I've got like a local sandbox thing. If I want to test that site on the phone, I can't access it because that URL only lives within the realm of my machine. And something like this, it just lets you check small changes with such speed. You just upload whatever changes you made to the theme, to your staging, reload the thing in your browser, reload the URL in your browser, and it's there. It just you don't have to. It's easy. Working with a content strategist, or it's just I don't know. So where next? The thing that those tools haven't solved for me. I tend to use the WordPress plugin boilerplate quite a lot for starting all my plugins. Now, it does require for you to change a lot of text by search replace and when you make errors. And to actually start a plugin can take like 20 minutes to half an hour just to change the names, make sure you've named everything correctly, and also to actually minify all my assets within the plugin without creating another grunt task that specifically for that plugin. Because if I work on a site, I've got a theme and then 3 other plugins. That means that for that one install, I have to run 4 different grunt tasks at one time in order to have all my assets optimized. And the final point, install dev plugins. When I start a WordPress install, I usually start with a set bunch of plugins that help me with the development. I haven't found a way of automatically installing them when I scaffold out my WordPress. Now, I've written a tool which I was going to live demo today, but it clocked in about 15 minutes to actually do what I've just described in the first 3 steps. So you can get it from a GitHub repo that's there. So it's a wrapper around WordPress, which is another YAML generator. It won't set up your server for you, but it'll scaffold your plugin. I've figured out a way to do plugin asset or plugin asset optimization, and if anybody's interested, I can show you in the pub when we've got more time. Yeah, simple. Also, I mean, I'm not saying that this is the right way, but these tools are very flexible. If you look at my repo, you can use it maybe as an example to find a way which will fit your workflow. Because I know everybody's different and has got their own ideas of what the right way of doing stuff is. So it's amazingly easy. If you know a bit of JavaScript, you can pick it up. I mean, I started the WPZest tool over 2.5 days. I had most of the functionality done by the 3rd day. Yeah, and it's kind of fun actually, if you like that kind of thing. And yeah, just some links for all the stuff that I talked about today. And that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you. We've got time. Any questions? Sorry, I was quite fast.
There was a lot of jargon words in there that I had never heard before, and it was a very interesting talk. But I don't know what half of it means.
it did occur to me and my girlfriend when I was doing some test runs of the talk. And that's why I kind of wanted to go with a live demo, because showing is better than telling. But
Yeah.
There is a talk at WordCamp London on WP-CLI, so you can learn about that.
Oh, right, cool.
But have you got a particular jargon word that you didn't
Theme
understand?
scaffolding actually was quite an interesting one.
Is
This is the glossary section.
Yeah, okay.
it's a term for basically doing something that's repetitive and pretty boilerplate, but you kind of have to do it. It's so when you start a plugin, you start with a certain set of files, and scaffolding means that it will automatically scaffold the needed files for you. So
Right.
it will automatically create your file structure and the names. So if you say, give me a plugin called events, it will create your classes with events name in there, and the constants and slugs and all that. So just replacement and kind of mundane.
Bit like using duplicator.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I've got a better way.
any more?
With concerns to the issue you raised about when you want to check updates on your mobile phone, I think CodeKit now gives you a live URL that you can use in order to refresh your phone as well.
Yes, CodeKit 2, right?
Yeah.
I did come on, it's pretty
really
good.
nice. And the other thing I use is ngrok.
Yeah,
It is a command line tool, and it's super easy to set up. And yeah, it's ngrok and some parameters, and then it gives you a URL. And you can use
it
that.
works with WordPress.
Yeah.
Right.
It works with any site. It's just it's like a tunneling software.
Okay. I used something else, sorry.
You can if you're using Vagrant to provision your virtual machines, you can actually use Vagrant SSH, and that will give you a URL as well, and anyone can access that, which is kind of handy if you're working in a remote team, and you can just like throw them a link to your local machine when you're trying to work out what a problem is without uploading the work and the code into a branch and having to commit it and everything else.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know. I did kind of tons of research, and I used the thing, a power server for Rails, and it gives you like this weird xip.io extension that you can put in any of your local sites, and you can browse it via the internal network. But it doesn't work with WordPress because you've changed the URL and it just all fails because of the database.
So you can configure the site URL to use like the server global. That's how you can have like a dynamic URL.
Right. Okay.
There are some things where some links will break, but for actually just looking at a layout, it's good enough. Yeah.
Cool. Just write all this down. Thanks. Any more?
Yeah. Have you heard of or used like source maps at all? With
Yes. So
JavaScript or Sass?
So the theme, there is the theme that I use. It's a fork of WordPress's start theme. Will automate your source maps by default.
Yeah.
As you edit your Sass, it comes with Sass.
Just when you mentioned that step that was probably quite long about going into functions.php and managing a separate JavaScript file and stuff.
You don't have to worry about it. It does it on watch. So as you edit it, your certain maps are generated for you. It's quite handy. The theme. So your WordPress is this WordPress generator. It comes with the theme, but the theme by default uses require.js, and I'm not so keen on require.js. So there's a fork. I've forked the repo, and there's a fork in my one that just concatenates and keeps it simpler.
Yeah.
If you wanted to check it out.
You said that you were worried about wanting to use the unminified files on development, but you don't have to do that with source maps. It's quite cool.
Yeah.
Use your minified, concatenated file, but you can still dig into it and see where that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Source maps does solve it. Any more questions? No. Oh. Yes. Thank you. No.